If you have decided that you want to stay with your partner even after infidelity has occurred, this video is for you. I'm going to take you through what you need to expect and what you need to know in order to get the most out of your decision and get through this situation. Many couples get through something like this, and it's more common than you'd probably like to think. But it does require some cooperation from both parties, and it does require a lot from you within yourself. So let's get into it. The first thing you need to do when you have found out that your partner has cheated and you've decided to stay with them is that you have to be able to hold space for a whole range of emotions. And a whole lot of things can be true at the same time. Your partner can love you at the same time as they can have cheated on you. Those two things can exist. Those two truths can exist at the same time. I know it doesn't feel, you'll just have to shut your brain off a little bit because many things can be true at the same time. And there are a lot of nuance in everything. It's important that you don't condone what has happened, and you staying with the person doesn't mean that you're condoning what happened. It means that you believe that you can get through whatever the root cause of the issues were and come out stronger. You have to understand that the process of rebuilding trust is not a quick fix. It's a long process, and it most commonly takes years for couples to truly reach a place where the trust is rebuilt after something like this. So you have to be very patient with yourself, you have to be very patient with your partner, and you have to make sure to always validate your own feelings along the way. No matter how messy they are, no matter whether you're going to go between feeling angry, hurt, love, fear of abandonment, this and that, it's going to be a whole mix of different emotions, and you just have to find a way to hold space for all of them. I, of course, recommend if something like this has happened and you genuinely do want to work on rebuilding trust, work with a professional. You're welcome to reach out to me. There's a link in the description below. I work with a lot of couples who've gone through something like this, and we work on understanding the situation from both perspectives, not condoning the behavior, but understanding the behavior and finding out what was the root cause of the cheating. And then we have very actionable strategies on how to rebuild the trust. So you want to validate your own feelings, but you also, it's uncomfortable, but your partner also has feelings. Even though they were the ones who did it, they're also going to be going through a lot of feelings. They probably have guilt. They probably feel sad. They probably feel angry at themselves. They probably feel, maybe punished by you a little bit sometimes, because what I see as a tendency with couples like this is that the person who was hurt is then going to display a lot of very controlling behaviors towards the person who has cheated, and they're going to be very angry. The person who has cheated will have to take a lot. So they have a lot of emotions to go through as well. Again, underlying here, not condoning it, just telling you the facts of how it feels for both parties to go through something like this. It's important that you have open and honest conversation. Honesty is everything at this point. And I do encourage couples to have that difficult conversation about everything that happened. Anything that you, as the person who was cheated on, wants to know, you should be able to ask your partner, and they should answer honestly, no matter how uncomfortable it is for them to answer honestly. Because what usually happens is what we call trickle truth. It's that they'll say a little bit one day, a week after they'll admit to a bit more, a week after they'll admit to a bit more, and that actually doesn't build trust. That does the opposite. That makes you trust them even less, because you thought you knew everything, and then you find out there was even more they were hiding. There was more. So I encourage from the get-go, get it all out there. The person who cheated is often afraid that the other person is going to leave them if they truly tell them everything. But you know what? There's probably a higher chance that they'll leave you if you just keep on hiding things and keep on trying to make it sound better than it actually was. It was really bad. What the person did was really destructive to the relationship, and that just has to be acknowledged. and then you can move on from there. So have that conversation. You should be able, you as the one who's been cheated on, you should be able to have a conversation where you are very clear about how you feel. It can be difficult for the other person because they're going to feel a lot of guilt when they see you in pain, but maybe that's a necessary part of the process. But the person who has cheated on you should also feel safe to come to you with their feelings. We don't want them to continue the cycle of hiding things from you because they're afraid of how you might take it in terms of how they feel. They should also feel open and welcome to come to you with their feelings. In these conversations that you're going to be having, it's very important that you get clear on what your needs are moving forward. What do you need from the other person in order to start trusting them again? Do you need appreciation? Do you need more control? To a certain extent, right? Because I see this going overboard with many couples. But do you need other boundaries than you had before in your relationship? Do you, for example, feel uncomfortable with them having female, let's say it's a man who cheated on you. Do you feel uncomfortable with him now having female friends and hanging out with those friends privately? Or are you fine with it? Do you feel uncomfortable with, like, do you want him to post you on social media just for the reassurance that he is open and honest with everyone else in his life about the fact that he's in a relationship with you? There can be different things that you need and different boundaries that you have and that you have to renegotiate. Because there's been a breach of trust, there's been a betrayal, and you need to figure out how to move on from here. It's really, really hard, but it is best if you can approach these conversations with curiosity instead of blame. So the other person, however hurtful it was for you to be cheated on, there was a reason for why they did it. The reason doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you, but you should approach it with curiosity if you can in any way possible, because that's the way you're going to make sure that this never happens again. You want to be curious and not blaming them, because otherwise they're not going to open up to you. That's just how human beings are. You need to make it a safe space for them to open up to you. You need to get to the bottom of why did they do what they did. And I've made other videos about this. I'm going to link to the other video I made about this. I think this can give you a lot of insight as well. It's more from the cheater's perspective, so I think that would be really helpful for you if you've been cheated on. But yeah, try to understand what happened. What were they looking for? Were they seeking more excitement? Were they looking for physical intimacy? Had they felt emotionally neglected in the relationship, controlled? What happened? And that's where, here's also where a professional can be very, very helpful to work with, because some of those questions can be difficult to ask. And they can also be difficult to answer unless there's a third party there to sort of help navigate this conversation and ask the right questions and make sure it doesn't end in a huge blow-up type of fight. The big thing is how to rebuild the trust. How are you going to rebuild the trust? This person just completely went behind your back and broke your heart. How are you ever going to trust them again? And an exercise I do with my clients is what we call radical honesty. And this is an exercise where the other person, the person who cheated, and both of you actually, have to practice radical honesty. And radical honesty hurts, but it makes you start trusting. So an example of radical honesty could be if you go to your partner and you say, "Do you like my new dress?" Before this happened, your partner could maybe people please you or appease you and say, "I love it. You look beautiful in everything, honey." But radical honesty is your partner saying, "I don't like that color. And actually, it's a little tight around your waist." If that's how they feel. You see what I mean? So there's no more people pleasing, no more appeasing, because while it feels good in the moment, it doesn't build trust. What actually builds trust is radical honesty, even when it hurts. In order for you to trust that your partner won't keep a secret like this from you again in the future, you have to trust that they have the courage to tell you what you don't want to hear. Okay? So you're going to be hearing a lot of things that you don't want to hear. And it might feel difficult, but it will build your trust. It will rebuild your trust. So that's what I recommend. It's really difficult, and a lot of couples struggle with it, but I've seen it rebuild trust for people. Transparency is, of course, key, and I think consistency is key as well, because what sometimes can happen is that right after the cheating occurred and you decide to stay with them, they'll be so good at just doing everything right and being transparent and showing you their phone and etc., etc. But then over time, things sort of go back to status quo and the way things were before the relationship, and that actually doesn't help the trust building. So the consistent effort from the other person and from you is really necessary. It doesn't take months, it takes years. So the consistency has to be, you have to do it for that long. You can't just do it for a couple of months and then think, oh, everything is fine now, because the trust is the foundation of the relationship. So you have to commit to change and personal growth. And I actually recommend that you both do it. You should commit to personal growth and change as well. Maybe there's things you could work on in the relationship as well. And depending on what the root cause of the issue was, maybe it also requires you to let go of control a little, or it requires you to whatever it is. I don't know what it is in your specific example. Again, you're welcome to work with me. There's a link in the description and we can figure it out together. But personal growth is non-negotiable, and learning how to communicate better without fear is also non-negotiable. Another thing that you have to be okay with is re-establishing physical and emotional intimacy. I understand that you can be very hesitant to jump back into the physical intimacy after something like this. Some couples, they have no problem with this, and other couples really struggle with getting back into things. But you have to make an effort. Even if it's just holding hands, giving each other a hug, cuddling at night, you have to get back into being physically connected. You have to get back into being emotionally connected, and it takes courage. It takes faith. Basically, if you've decided to stay, you have to do it wholeheartedly. You can have your guard up in the beginning. That's completely natural. You absolutely should. But it's like either you're in or you're out. What sometimes happens is that you'll stay with your partner after they've done something like this, but you'll have one foot in and one foot out of the relationship. And you know what? That doesn't make you happy either. It's okay in the beginning, but over time, you have to be 100% in this again, especially if your partner is truly sorry, truly working on themselves and showing you in every way possible that they want this to work with you. There comes a point where you have to practice forgiveness. And no, forgiveness does not mean condoning what happened. Forgiveness does not mean that you're going to put up with anything and that you're weak and that it will happen again if you let go. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, to let go of your resentment, to feel lighter, to let the other person be who they are, because this punishment that most people end up, this punishment cycle that they end up in, is just very, very toxic, especially when it over a long period of time. So it's natural to want to punish your partner a bit in the beginning after they've done something like this, but eventually you have to move on. So you have to make a conscious decision of letting go. Practice forgiveness. You can start by making a list of what's really hard for me to forgive, what would be easier for me to forgive, and then start by forgiving the easier things, okay? Forgiving also doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean you're going to forget about it. It just means you make a choice to move on. It means that you love the other person and you trust that they're sorry and you trust that they're working on themselves, so this never ever happens again. Be realistic with your expectations. Like I've said, it's not going to happen overnight. And then use this as an opportunity to learn and grow together. Do new things together. Go on vacations together. Build a life where you are each other's best friends again. Maybe you were that before as well. I don't know your situation specifically, but try to make an effort to hang out on the weekends when you have time off. Do something that you both like that makes you get to know each other better, to strengthen that emotional intimacy we talked about. That's also really important. So when something like this has happened, the relationship has to be your number one priority, at least for a long while. Especially, for the first year or two, you have to really prioritize the relationship. You can't just go back into being a workaholic and not spending any time and energy on your relationship after something like that. This will be your full-time job, and anything else you do will be secondary. And it's a lot to ask, but you know what? If this is your life partner, your person, then it's worth it. And then you don't like to hear it, but be prepared for the outcome. You have to give it everything you've got, but there is a slight chance that it's not going to work and that you're not going to be able to forgive. Who knows? I don't know about your specific partner. There is a slight chance that there is something there and they are a narcissist or some kind of a sociopath or a serial cheater and they'll do it again. I don't hope that. So this video is for healthy couples where both people are genuinely wanting things to work, and not for relationships where one person is a pathological liar or has some other sort of more serious issues to deal with. A lot of couples get through this, but some don't. If you try to follow all of these guidelines, there's a high chance that you and your partner will get through this, but it does require your partner to be equally as invested in the growth and the process as you are. Being in a relationship after someone has cheated is a difficult decision, but it is a decision that many people make. It's very, very common, especially if it's a one-time thing and it happened once, even sometimes one-time affairs. People end up staying with their spouses. Sometimes there's kids involved and it's just bigger than just the two of you. It's challenging, but you absolutely can get through it. I hope this video helped you with some tips and some tools and guidelines as to how to navigate all of this. If you like the video, please like it and subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.